The morning shift at the Tholian research station started like any other. Scientists worked quietly in their laboratories, studying the strange energy readings from the nearby gas giant. The station floated peacefully in space, its white hull gleaming under the distant star's light for 3 years. Nothing exciting had happened here. That changed when the emergency communication system suddenly came alive with crackling static and panicked voices. Dorcale was examining mineral samples when the distress signal broke through. At first, he thought it was just interference from the gas giant's magnetic field. But then he heard the words clearly. "This is Delta 7 mining colony. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack." The entire research station went silent. Delta 7 was supposed to be a quiet mining operation on the edge of known space. They extracted rare metals and minded their own business. Who would attack them? The transmission continued, and Dr. Kale's blood ran cold. "Dominion Empire ships are bombing our cities from orbit. They're not even asking us to surrender. They're just killing everyone. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need help. We have families here, children." Dr. Kale rushed to the main communication center, where his team was already gathering around the screens. The signals were weak but clear enough to understand the horrible situation. Commander Vex of the Dominion Empire had arrived with a full battle fleet and declared the colonists worthless insects that needed to be removed, sir. "We're receiving video feeds," said one of the technicians, her voice shaking. "I don't think you want to see this," but Dr. Kale had to look. The screens showed burning buildings, people running through smoke-filled streets, and massive explosions as Dominion warships fired from space. Families were being separated. Parents were trying to protect their children. It was a massacre. "How many ships does the Dominion have there?" Dr. Kale asked. "Intelligence reports show at least 15 heavy cruisers and 3 battleships," came the reply. "They have enough firepower to glass the entire planet." Dr. Kale felt helpless. His research station had no weapons. The Tholian Council back home had only 3 small patrol ships for their entire star system. These were exploration vessels with light shields and basic defensive systems against Dominion battleships. They would last maybe 10 minutes. The Dominion Empire was known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty. They believed only their species deserved to exist. Any other race was either enslaved or exterminated. They had been growing bolder lately, attacking smaller colonies that couldn't fight back. "Sir, what do we do?" asked his assistant. "We can't just ignore this, Doctor." Kale stared at the screens, showing the destruction. More distress calls were coming in from different parts of Delta 7. The situation was getting worse by the hour soon. There might be nobody left to save. Then, he remembered something that made his skin crawl with fear and hope at the same time. There was one species that even the Dominion Empire avoided, one race that every civilization warned their children about. In scary stories, "Get me a connection to the Outer Rim Communication Network," he ordered. "Sir." "You're not thinking of," his assistant started to say. "The humans," Dr. Kale finished. "We're going to contact the humans." Everyone in the room went quiet. Even mentioning humans made most aliens uncomfortable. Earth was listed in every navigation database, with warnings in bright red letters. The planet was classified as a death world. Impossible for normal life to survive. Crushing gravity, poisonous atmosphere, deadly weather, and worst of all, the creatures that lived there, humans, were legends. Some said they hunted their own food with primitive weapons. Others claimed they could survive injuries that would kill any civilized being. Their world had produced thousands of different ways to die, and somehow, humans had survived them. Almost species believed that contacting humans meant certain death. Their military was rumored to be beyond understanding, built for warfare on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. But today, Dr. Kale hoped those terrifying stories were true, because if humans were really as dangerous as everyone said, maybe they could save Delta-7, maybe monsters could fight monsters. The emergency alert echoed through Earth Defense Command. At exactly 0347 hours, Admiral Jake Morrison was already awake, reviewing fleet reports in his office overlooking the lunar surface. He had learned long ago that sleep was a luxury when you commanded humanity's military forces. The transmission from the Thulian research station took 37 minutes to decode. Morrison watched the alien scientist's terrified face on his screen, listened to the desperate plea for help, and then saw the footage from Delta 7. Kalinia's coffee mug hit the floor and shattered. Morrison had seen combat footage before. He had fought in 3 different conflicts across human space, but watching defenseless families run from orbital bombardment while their children screamed brought back memories he tried to keep buried. Memories of his own childhood on Europa Station when raiders had attacked. The fear, the helplessness, the way adults tried to shield kids with their own bodies. "Get me Captain Hayes," he said into his communicator, his voice deadly. Captain Beth Hayes arrived in his office within minutes, still pulling on her uniform jacket. She had been Morrison's second-in-command for 8 years, and knew that tone meant serious trouble. "Sir, what's the situation?" she asked. Morrison turned his screen toward her. The footage was still playing. Cities burning, people fleeing, massive explosions lighting up the night sky. Hayes watched for 30 seconds before her expression hardened. "How far out?" she asked. 16 days at maximum burn with our fastest ships," Morrison replied. "The Dominion Empire is systematically destroying civilian targets. Intelligence estimates they have enough firepower to glass the entire planet within a week." Hayes studied the tactical display. Delta 7 was deep in uncharted space, far from any military base or patrol route. By the time any conventional rescue force arrived, there would be nothing left to rescue, sir. Our closest battle group is the 3rd Fleet near Proxima. They could be there in 12 days if we push the engines hard. Morrison shook his head. The 3rd Fleet has 6 destroyers and 2 cruisers. The Dominion brought 3 battleships and 15 heavy cruisers. Our ships would be target practice. He stood up and walked to the massive window overlooking Earth's moon. The shipyards were visible in the distance, where humanity's most powerful vessels waited in the shadows. Ships that most aliens didn't even know existed mobilized. The Annihilation fleet, Morrison said quietly. Hayes went very still. "Sir, are you sure? The Annihilation fleet hasn't been deployed since the Centauri War. Most of the galaxy doesn't even know it exists. All 12 dreadnoughts." Morrison continued. "Full battle configuration load. The Pandora weapons." The Pandora weapons were humanity's most closely guarded secret, developed during the darkest period of Earth's history, when extinction seemed certain. They represented the absolute limit of human destructive capability. Even their existence violated 17 different galactic treaties, though humans had never signed those treaties in the first place. Hayes swallowed hard. "Admiral, if we deploy those weapons, there won't be anything left of the Dominion fleet to question afterward." "Good," Morrison replied. "Send the authorization codes to all fleet commanders. I want every ship ready to launch within 18 hours. The next 18 hours were controlled chaos. Across the solar system, massive dreadnoughts that had been sleeping in hidden bases suddenly came alive. Ships longer than cities powered up their reactors and loaded weapons that could crack planets. Crews, who had trained for years in simulation, finally boarded their vessels for real combat. The flagship Retribution led the formation out of Earth's shadow. Its hull was jet black, designed to absorb sensor readings and hide its true capabilities inside. Weapon systems that had been theoretical concepts just decades ago were now ready for deployment. Morrison stood on the bridge as they prepared for the hyperspace jump around him. His crew worked with quiet efficiency. These weren't regular Navy personnel. These were volunteers who had signed up, knowing they might someday have to unleash humanity's darkest capabilities. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Hayes announced. Morrison looked at the star chart one more time. Delta 7 was still 16 days away, but the Annihilation fleet could cross that distance in 4 days using experimental jump drives that pushed the laws of physics to their breaking point. "Take us to hyperspace," he ordered as space twisted around them, and the fleet disappeared into the void. Morrison's only regret was that they might still arrive too late to save anyone, but if they were too late, He would make sure the Dominion Empire regretted ever leaving their home system. The hyperspace jump ended with a flash of light that briefly outshone the system's star. 12 massive human ships appeared in perfect formation above Delta 7, their black hulls emerging from the void like ancient sea monsters rising from the deep on the bridge of the Retribution. Admiral Morrison studied the tactical display with growing anger. The planet below was a burning mess. Entire cities had been reduced to glowing craters, orbital stations hung in pieces, their twisted metal catching the light like broken jewelry. The atmosphere itself was on fire in some places where the Dominion had used chemical weapons, sir. We're reading 36 Dominion ships, in 3 battle groups, reported Lieutenant Hayes from the sensor station. They're spread across the planet in bombardment formation. Looks like they've been at this for days. Morrison watched the enemy ships continue their methodical destruction. These weren't military targets. They were schools, hospitals, residential areas. The Dominion wasn't trying to conquer Delta 7. They were trying to erase it completely. Any survivors on the surface? Morrison asked. Yes, sir. But the readings are scattered and weak, maybe a few 100,000 people hiding in underground shelters. The population was over 2 million when this started. The numbers hit Morrison like a physical blow. 1.5 million people were already dead, murdered from space by an empire that saw other species as insects to be exterminated aboard the Dominion flagship destroyer. Admiral Rex was having a very different reaction to the human arrival. He stood in his command center, surrounded by his senior officers, and actually started laughing when the sensor readings came in 12 ships. Rex said, his voice filled with amusement. The Deathworlders sent 12 ships against our entire battle fleet. His tactical officer, Commander Zek, studied the readings more carefully, sir. The ships are large, but their design is unusual. I'm not reading standard weapon signatures. Rex waved dismissively. Primitive technology from a primitive world. Everyone knows humans are barely past the Stone Age. Their ships probably use chemical rockets and metal projectiles around the bridge. Other Dominion officers chuckled at their admiral's joke. They had heard the stories about Earth. Of course, the deadly planet with crushing gravity and poisonous air. But those were just stories told to frighten children. Real military commanders knew that harsh environments produced weak, desperate creatures. Not strong ones, sir. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Reported the communications officer. Put it through, Rex ordered. Still smiling, he was curious to hear what these Deathworlders had to say before he destroyed them. Commander. Mike Turner's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. Despite the situation, this is the Terran Defense Force addressing all Dominion vessels. You are engaged in the unlawful bombardment of civilian targets. Withdraw immediately from this system, or face total annihilation. The Dominion bridge erupted in laughter. Rex had to wipe tears from his eyes. Did you hear that? Total annihilation. From 12 little ships. But Commander Zek wasn't laughing anymore. His face had gone pale as he studied the detailed sensor readings. Sir, I'm getting some unusual power signatures from those ships. Their reactors are generating energy levels that shouldn't be possible. Impossible. Is right, Rex replied. Their sensors must be broken, probably left over from whatever scrapyard they bought those ships from. The human fleet remained in perfect formation, waiting for a response on each ship. Weapons systems were powering up to full capacity. Crews ran final checks on equipment that had been designed specifically for maximum destruction. These weren't exploration vessels or even standard warships. They were doomsday weapons disguised as starships back on the Retribution. Morrison watched the Dominion fleet's response. Instead of withdrawing, the enemy ships were turning to face the humans directly. Weapon ports were opening, shields were strengthening, and the 3 battle groups were moving into attack formation. They're not backing down, Admiral, reported Captain Hayes. Morrison nodded. Grimly, he had hoped the Dominion would be smart enough to retreat when faced with superior firepower, but like most bullies, they only understood violence, sir. We're being targeted by multiple enemy vessels, called out the tactical officer there, preparing to fire all ships, battle stations, Morrison announced over the fleet communication system. "Load Pandora weapons. Prepare for full engagement." Throughout the human fleet, weapons that violated the laws of civilized warfare came online. Artificial black holes, stabilized and magnetic containment fields, kinetic kill vehicles accelerated to impossible speeds. Reality itself began to bend around devices that turned theoretical physics into instruments of war. Admiral Rex made his final mistake when he gave the order to attack. He genuinely believed he was about to destroy 12 primitive ships with superior numbers and advanced technology. He had no idea he was about to face weapons designed by creatures who had survived on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. The first Dominion salvo lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. Dozens of energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the human fleet, weapons that had destroyed countless civilizations across the galaxy. The Dominion officers watched their screens with satisfaction, expecting to see the primitive Deathworlders ships break apart under the assault. Instead, the human vessels simply absorbed the attack. Their shields flickered slightly, then returned to full strength, as if nothing had happened. Admiral Rex stared at his tactical display in confusion. What just happened? Did our weapons malfunction? His weapons officer checked the readings twice before responding. "Sir, all weapons fired successfully and hit their targets, but the human ships show no damage whatsoever." "That's impossible," Rex snapped. "Hit them again." The second Dominion attack was even more intense. Every ship in the fleet fired simultaneously, concentrating their firepower on a single human vessel. The space around the target ship glowed, white-hot from the energy discharged. When the light faded, the human ship was still there, completely undamaged on the Retribution's bridge. Admiral Morrison watched the enemy attacks with cold satisfaction. "Their weapons are designed for fighting other civilized species," he explained to his crew. "They've never encountered shields built to withstand Earth's radiation storms and solar flares." Captain Hayes checked the power readings. "Sir, their attacks aren't even straining our defensive systems." "Then let's show them what real weapons look like," Morrison replied. "All ships, you are free to engage. Make it quick." What happened next redefined the word destruction. The human ships had been built on a world where survival meant overcoming impossible odds every single day. Their weapons reflected that harsh reality. While other species developed energy beams and guided missiles, humans had perfected the art of throwing very large objects very, very fast. Captain Rodriguez commanded the dreadnought Thunderstrike, and her ship's main weapon was beautifully simple in concept. Take a piece of dense metal the size of a small building, accelerate it to 15% of light speed using magnetic fields, and point it at something you wanted to stop existing. Target the 2 cruisers on our port side. She ordered. Her weapons officer locked on. "Captain, fire." The railgun's discharge was barely visible, just a brief flicker of light, but the projectile it launched had been designed to punch through the armor of tanks built to survive on Earth, where even the rain could kill you. Against Dominion shields meant for civilized warfare, it might as well have been shot through tissue paper. The first cruiser simply vanished. One moment it was there, a massive warship with a crew of 3,000. The next moment, there was nothing but an expanding cloud of superheated gas. The projectile had hit with such force that it vaporized the entire ship instantly. The second cruiser tried to turn away, but kinetic weapons don't care about evasive maneuvers. The projectile passed through the ship from bow to stern, leaving a perfectly round hole, 3 meters wide. For a brief moment, the cruiser held together. Then structural failure took over, and the ship broke apart like a toy stepped on by a giant. Admiral Rex watched 2 of his most powerful vessels disappear in less than 3 seconds. His voice cracked when he tried to give orders. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Those aren't normal weapons." But the human fleet was just getting started. The Retribution's main gun was humanity's masterpiece of destructive engineering, while other species built bigger lasers or more powerful missiles. Human scientists had asked a simple question: what if we could create a tiny black hole and throw it at our enemies? The controlled singularity cannon was the answer. It generated a microscopic black hole, contained it in a magnetic field, and launched it at the target upon impact. The containment field would collapse, and the black hole would briefly exist in normal space, consuming everything around it before evaporating in a flash of radiation. Morrison personally targeted Rex's flagship fire, the main gun. The weapon's discharge created a ripple in space itself. Reality seemed to bend around the retribution as impossible energies were unleashed. The projectile was invisible, moving too fast for sensors to track. When it hit the Dominion flagship, the ship didn't explode, it simply ceased to exist. A perfect sphere of nothingness appeared where the massive vessel had been, consuming metal, energy, and crew alike. Then the black hole evaporated, leaving behind absolutely nothing, no debris, no wreckage, no trace that a ship had ever been there. The remaining Dominion vessels began to panic. Their formations broke apart as ships tried to flee in every direction, but Lieutenant Walker was coordinating the human attack from the tactical center, and he had already calculated the optimal firing solutions for every enemy vessel targets assigned. He announced to the fleet, "Light them up." The next 20 minutes were a systematic demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. Human weapons designed for the harshest environment in the galaxy tore through Dominion defenses like they weren't even there. Ships that had conquered dozens of star systems were reduced to scrap metal and glowing gas. The few Dominion vessels that managed to escape were broadcasting frantic warnings on all frequencies. Their messages were barely coherent, filled with terror and disbelief. Words like impossible, monsters, and run for your lives filled the communication channels as the last enemy ship jumped to hyperspace. Morrison surveyed the battlefield, where moments before there had been 36 Dominion warships. Now there was only debris and the fading glow of weapons discharge. All ships begin rescue operations immediately, he ordered. Get every medical team down to the planet's surface. We have people to save. The demonstration was over now. The real work could begin. The human medical ships looked nothing like the terrifying dreadnoughts that had just finished destroying an entire battle fleet. These vessels were white and curved, designed for healing rather than warfare. But as they descended through Delta's smoky atmosphere, the survivors hiding in underground shelters could hardly believe their eyes. For 3 days, they had listened to the sounds of orbital bombardment above their heads, the constant thunder of explosions, the screaming of wounded people, the terrible silence that followed when entire city blocks were vaporized. Many had given up hope entirely, certain they would die slowly in their concrete bunkers, while the Dominion systematically destroyed everything on the surface. Then, suddenly, the bombing had stopped. The all-clear signal came from somewhere in orbit, transmitted on emergency frequencies. In dozens of languages, this is the Terran Defense Force. All Dominion vessels have been eliminated. Medical assistance is en route to all survivor locations in the main shelter beneath New Geneva City. Nearly 10,000 people had been hiding for 72 hours with dwindling supplies and failing life support systems. When the human medics finally broke through the sealed blast doors, they found families huddled together in the darkness, parents holding their children, elderly people sharing their last rations with younger survivors. Dr. Riley Chen led the first medical team into the shelter. She had volunteered for this mission after seeing the combat footage, and nothing could have prepared her for what she found. These weren't soldiers or military personnel. They were teachers, farmers, shop owners, artists, people who had never hurt anyone, whose only crime was living on a planet the Dominion Empire wanted to claim. "We're here to help," she announced in the local language, her voice carrying through translation devices. "You're safe now. We're going to get you proper medical care and food." An elderly man approached her carefully, his clothes torn and dirty from days of hiding. "Are you really human?" he asked. "From Earth?" Dr. Chen nodded. "Yes, we are." The old man began to cry. "We thought you were just stories, scary tales to frighten children. But you actually came to save us." Similar scenes were playing out across the planet as human rescue teams located, Survivor after survivor mobile hospitals were established in the ruins of destroyed cities. Food and medical supplies were distributed freely. Engineers worked around the clock to restore power grids and water systems. But while the rescue operations continued on Delta, the rest of the galaxy was dealing with a completely different kind of crisis. The combat footage from the battle had spread across communication networks faster than anyone thought possible. Every major civilization had intelligence services that monitored military conflicts. They collected data on weapon capabilities, shield technologies, and tactical doctrines. It was routine information gathering that helped governments understand potential threats and opportunities. But the footage from Delta 7 broke every model and prediction they had ever made on the Centauri Council homeworld. Military analysts played the same 30-second clip over and over again. It showed a human railgun projectile hitting a Dominion cruiser and vaporizing it instantly, not destroying it, not crippling it, but actually converting the entire ship into glowing gas in less than a second. Run the calculations again, ordered General Voss, the Council's highest-ranking military officer. His aide checked the numbers for the 5th time. Sir, the projectile was traveling at approximately 15% of light speed. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to a small stellar explosion. No known shield technology could withstand that kind of impact. General Voss stared at the frozen image on his screen. How many ships does our fleet have that could survive a single hit from that weapon? None, sir, not one. The same conversation was happening in government buildings across hundreds of worlds. Military planners who had spent their careers preparing for conventional warfare suddenly realized they were obsolete. Every battle plan, every strategic doctrine, every defensive system had been rendered useless by weapons that didn't follow the accepted rules of civilized combat. The Dominion Empire's reaction was the most dramatic. Within 6 hours of the battle, their high command sent an unconditional surrender message to Earth defense. Command they offered to withdraw from 37 contested star systems, pay massive reparations to Delta 7's survivors, and submit to human oversight of their military operations. Admiral Morrison read the surrender terms with satisfaction. But he wasn't surprised. Bullies always became very reasonable once they met someone stronger than themselves. Other aggressive species had similar reactions. The Hegemony Alliance quietly canceled their planned invasion of the Outer Rim territories. The conquest fleet that had been massing near Beta Centauri suddenly found urgent reasons to return home. 3 different empires that had been fighting over mining rights in disputed space agreed to peaceful negotiations within days. Diorcale, the Thelian scientist who had first sent the distress call, arrived at Earth aboard a diplomatic vessel. 2 weeks later, he carried formal documents from his government requesting a mutual defense treaty with humanity. Similar requests came from dozens of other species who suddenly realized they wanted the Deathworlders as allies rather than enemies. But the most telling reaction came from an ancient species called the Chroniclers, who maintained the galaxy's most comprehensive star charts and navigation databases for thousands of years. They had marked certain star systems with warning symbols in every known language. Sol, humanity's home system, had always carried the most severe warnings possible. The official designation translated roughly to approach, forbidden, lethal world, hostile inhabitants, extreme danger. After the Battle of Delta 7, the Chroniclers updated their charts. Sol's new designation was much simpler. Protected space, authorized vessels only, enforcement absolute. Admiral Morrison brought his fleet home to Earth's shadow. 3 days later, the massive dreadnoughts disappeared back into their hidden bases, their weapons powered down and stored away to most of the galaxy. It looked like humanity was returning to its peaceful isolation, but everyone now understood the truth. Humans remained peaceful by choice, not because they lacked the power to be anything else. They were gardeners who happened to own the galaxy's most powerful weapons. Farmers who could crack planets, if sufficiently motivated. The Deathworlders had sent their message clearly: leave innocent people alone, or face the consequences. It was a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget.